What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be getting back to work on the super cheap turbo Civic. In the last video we finally got this thing on E85 and it is absolutely flying, but now that we're actually leaning on the fuel system, I'd really like a way to log fuel pressure. Currently we just have a mechanical gauge on the fuel pressure regulator itself, but obviously once we start driving the car we have no way of seeing what that pressure is or logging it during a pull. So I decided to order up a 0 to 100 PSI sensor from Low Dollar Motorsports, which is going to give us the ability to wire this in directly to the Hondata so that we can now log fuel pressure to make sure that it's climbing with boost and maintaining during a run. So let's get this thing wired up so we can go out and make some more pulls. Now that we've gotten through the intro, let's open up our new Low Dollar Motorsports sensor and take a look at this thing. So this is the first time that I've ever ordered anything from Low Dollar Motorsports, and I have to say their selection and their pricing are both phenomenal. So we decided to go with the 799 series sensor. They also have an 899 series, which is more for like boost control, dome pressure, stuff like that. But this is the more affordable 799 series, and I believe this sensor cost me right around $41. And then if you add an extra $5, you can get a 6-foot long harness that will plug directly into this sensor. But if you don't decide to do that, you can also just get this plug that comes with it, and then we can wire it in however we see fit. Now, after picking up this sensor, I went on their website real quick and very quickly found out they have all the information that you might need right there on their website. Gives you a full wiring pinout so we know exactly which pin needs to go where, and it gives you a couple different scaling options depending on the ECU that you're running. So now that we've checked out this sensor, let's head out to the car, see where we want to put it, and get this thing wired in. Alright guys, now that we're out here at the car, let's take a look at how we're going to plumb this thing up. So as you can see, our fuel pressure regulator right back here near the firewall. So originally I was just going to pull out this mechanical gauge, throw our Low Dollar Motorsports sensor directly into it, but much like our ProCharge GTO, I'd really like to keep the mechanical gauge as well as add the ability to data log with our electronic gauge. So we reached out to Evil Energy and they sent us out this little 6AN to 6AN adapter with an 1/8 inch NPT bung, which is the exact threads of our Low Dollar Motorsports sensor. So we're going to take off the feed line that goes into the fuel pressure regulator. We'll put our adapter in there and then thread the sensor into that so we can keep both the mechanical and our electronic gauge. So let's get that line pulled off. We'll get this adapter thrown in, put a little bit of thread sealant on our new sensor, and then we can start wiring this thing up. All right, so I've got this jigged up in our little vise here. We're gonna go ahead, get our sensor thrown in and tighten it down. Now, I don't recommend using any type of Teflon tape on any fuel system components because it can get in there and clog stuff up. So instead, I use this True Blue. It's not specifically made for fuel, but I've used this stuff a whole bunch and have had really good results, knock on wood. So we're gonna go ahead and use some of this. It's just a little putty. So we're going to put some on the threads. Also keep in mind that these threads are designed to seal all on their own, but this stuff is definitely an added insurance. So let's go ahead, put a little bit on here. We want to make sure not to get any in the actual sensor opening. Let's go ahead, thread this thing in. Now, if it matters to you, make sure you keep in mind where you want your decal to face. In our case, I want it that way, but wherever the sensor tightens up, it tightens up. I was able to put it in our other vise, and I was able to get it tightened down enough to where it's facing how we want. So now we can go ahead and throw this on the car. We're finally ready to go ahead and put our sensor in place. I'm just gonna get these started. We're not gonna tighten them down quite yet, just in case I need to move it around when we're doing our wiring, but we are gonna go ahead and get them started. All right, boom. It's gonna sit something just like that. So let's go ahead, figure out what we're gonna do for wiring and start on that. Now that we've got the sensor plumbed in, we can start working on wiring. So I've got the plug that came with the sensor right here on the bench. No additional money, they just include this with the sensor, which I think is really nice. Comes with everything we need to make a plug for it. So you've got your terminals here, retainer, and then the little rubber boots to help make it weatherproof. We're also gonna need some pins for the analog input in our Hondata S300 ECU. I had some left over from another project, so we're good to go there. Now all we need is some wiring. So looking through my big old mess pile of wiring, I did find this whole roll of some pretty thin gauge wire, which is exactly what we need today. This sensor does not draw much at all, probably in the milliamps, I would believe. So I think this wire here is going to be absolutely perfect for what we're trying to do. And we can use some spare wire that we had laying around. So I'm going to go ahead, get this plug made, and then I'll show you guys the pinout of how this sensor needs to be wired and where each wire needs to go. Now that we've got the sensor plumbed up, it's time to start wiring. So I've got a pinout from Low Dollar Motorsports that I'll put up on your guys' screen real quick. It's a very simple 3-wire sensor. So I'm just going to go ahead and get our roll of wire that we're going to be using opened up here. As you guys can see on the diagram there, we need a 5-volt wire, we need a sensor ground wire, and then a signal wire that's going to go to our ECU. So we really only need those 3 wires. Before I strip the wire back, I'm going to put these little weatherproof boots on here. It's a lot easier before you strip the wire. Otherwise they get caught on each individual strand. Now we don't need to strip a ton of wire off of this. We just need enough to go into our little connector there. And then I'm gonna crimp these down onto the insulation so that it gets a good bite. If you try to roll those over and crimp them onto the wire itself, then a lot of times they'll accidentally pull out. But if we crush them down onto the insulation, it gives it something better to bite into. So let's go ahead, get this one crimped down, and then we can do the rest of them. Now that we've got all 3 terminals on the ends of our wires, we can go ahead and start inserting them into the plug itself. So this is the part where you're gonna wanna look at that little diagram I showed you and keep track of which wire color you have going to what. So in our case, I'm gonna use the black wire that we have for sensor ground. Then I'm gonna use the red wire for our 5 volts. Then the last wire I'm going to use for our signal to our Hondata. So let's go ahead and get these put in the plug accordingly. And then we can put the little retainer on, push the little weather boots in, and this plug is good to go. Then you'll feel it clip in just like that once it gets past the little lock right there. Now we can do the same thing with our other 2 wires. Now we've got all 3 of our wires in there. This is just a little retainer that's going to clip over there. Make sure that you have them all where you want them. Now we can just take these little weatherproofing boots and we're going to bring them down, and you simply just push them right in. Now that we've got our connector all assembled, we can take a piece of heat shrink. I prefer the one that is adhesive lined. We can slide it over this lip right up to this flat surface, heat shrink it down, and we'll have a very professional looking pigtail. Looks really good. Let's get it wired up. Now that we've got our pigtail made up for our new pressure sensor, it's time to start doing the wiring on the car side. So we've obviously got 3 wires that we need to work with. One is a signal wire that is going to go directly to the ECU. Then we need 5 volts and then a sensor ground. So instead of running them all into the ECU, we are going to tap into our map sensor. So as you guys can see right up top here, we have our Hondata 4-bar map sensor, and much like our new pressure sensor, this has a 5 volt, a sensor ground, and then a signal wire. Now the harness isn't in the best shape anyways, so it makes it a great candidate for me to cut this open, see what's going on in there, and figure out which wire is which for us to wire into. So you can find a pinout for these online, but instead of just going off of that, I'm going to use my voltmeter, test each wire, and make sure we have the proper one so we don't get anything wired up incorrectly. So let's grab our voltmeter, start testing, then we'll open up this harness and tap into it. So I've got our map sensor unplugged, and we're going to use our voltmeter to test each wire and figure out which one's which. So I've got a safety pin here. So I've got 3.53 volts on that wire. So that might be our signal wire. This one's 0.01, so I'm going to assume that that's our sensor ground. Then this next one, we should see 5 volts. Yep, 5 volts. All right, so we've got 5 volts, ground, and then our signal wire. So that's nice and simple. I'm going to write down which color those are. In our case, it looks like our 5 volt is the yellow wire. Green and white looks like sensor ground, and then I'm not sure if that's brown or red, but that one seems to be the signal. We'll cut the green and the yellow and then tap in to our new wires for the pressure sensor, and then we should be good to go. Battery still hooked up, key is off, so it should be fine, but I still want to just do one at a time. So we'll do this 5-volt first, and then we'll do the sensor ground. Don't love doing that, but it's what we've got. And then we can go ahead, put a connector on that, tie it into that one, and then heat shrink it. I am using heat shrink crimp connectors that have adhesive in them, so they usually work out pretty decent. Give them a nice pull before we get any further. Neither one's gonna pull out. Now we can go ahead and strip this one, do the same thing on this end, and then we'll heat shrink that and then put that sleeve over it. All right, let's heat shrink those down and get it plugged back in and wrapped up. All right guys, so as you can see, I went ahead and pulled the battery out real quick, and then we already had a little hole popped in this grommet for some other wiring for our fuel pump hot wire kit and stuff like that. So I just took some welding wire, stuffed it through there with the other wiring, taped our new wire to it, and now we're just gonna pull it through and feed it into the cabin so that we can wire it into our Hondata. Now that I've got the wire in for our new pressure sensor, we can go ahead and pop the cover off our ECU and get this wired into our analog input. Now that we've got the cover off our ECU, we can add a pin to our analog input plug right here. As you can see, we already have one wire going to it. That's our flex fuel sensor. If you guys want to see how we set it up on this car and how we set up the tune to accept flex fuel, make sure to go back and check out that video. I covered it all in pretty deep detail. But first thing we need to do is go ahead and get this thing unplugged. And now we can add a pin to it. So we've got one of our new pins here for the analog plug, and we're gonna do the same exact thing that we did earlier for our pressure sensor plug. This is just a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna go ahead, strip a little bit of this back. We need to decide how we wanna run it. I left a bunch of extra wire because I might still move the ECU at some point. And I'm gonna go with analog number 2. Just like so. All right, let's go ahead and plug that back into the board, and we're just about ready to set it up in the computer. We're in there. It does still wiggle a little bit because we only have those 2 pins in there, but I didn't want to use this ground. I didn't feel like running the wire in here, so we'll be good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and just zip tie these together in here. I put the cover on and then zip tied it up underneath the dash. We're finally ready to hook up to it with the laptop and set up our sensor and our data logs. Now that we've got the ECU back up under the dash, I'm gonna go ahead and power on the laptop. We'll get in here, set up the sensor in our tune, and then see if it works. Now that we're hooked up to the ECU, let's go under parameters. We're gonna go analog inputs. We have analog 0 being used by flex fuel. So we're gonna do fuel PSI. We're just gonna do custom. We're gonna go to pressure, PSI, voltage offset. We're gonna leave it 0 volts for now. So down here under custom input, we have voltage and then value. Sadly with Hondata, it's in bar, so I'll have to do some math to convert it real quick. But Low Dollar Motorsports has a really nice chart right on their website. I'll put a picture up on your guys' screen, and it gives you the values to voltage ratio for pretty much all of their sensors. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. I'll convert it to bar, and then we'll get it entered in. So looking at the chart from Low Dollar Motorsports, it looks like at 0 volts, we are negative 12.5 PSI, which equals 0.862 bar. And then at 5 volts, we would be 112.5 PSI, which equals 7.757 bar. We should be good. Let's go ahead, set it up in our data log screen here, and then we can give it a try. Now that we've got the calibration all set up for our new sensor, let's go ahead and add it as a gauge. So we'll do new value. Let's change the font real quick to yellow so we can see it. Change the sensor. We're gonna go to analog inputs, and I'm gonna do AN1. As you guys can see, it's reading negative 1.5 PSI. It's probably really 0 PSI, but the reason it's doing that is because with Hondata, we can't put in the exact voltage to value calibration. We had to convert it to bar, and the exact bar was 0.862, and we can't put in that third digit, so it's 0.86 or negative 0.86. All right, guys, so me from the future here real quick, and as you can see, we entered in our voltages versus values under our custom inputs, and I actually put the wrong information in there, and that is evident by this negative fuel pressure reading with the key on, engine off, pump off. So we're gonna go ahead and address that real quick. So we're gonna change the 0 to 0.5 and put 0 bar. Then we can change our 5 volts to 4.5 volts. And our 7.75 bar is now going to be 6.89 bar. So we're going to go ahead, flash that, and we should see this negative number go to 0, which it did. So my mistake. I am by no means a tuner. I learn something new every day, and today that just happened to be it. So wanted to jump in here and share that with you guys. Let's get back to today's video. Test fuel pump. 44.5 PSI right on the dot. I had it set with the mechanical gauge to right around 43.5. So pretty decently close for that mechanical gauge. Now we can fire this thing up, take it for a ride, do a log, and see what our fuel pressure does. Real quick before we take this thing for a ride, just in case you guys have never done it before, I'm going to show you how to add the fuel pressure to our data logs. So we're going to right click, we're going to go down to define template. That'll pull up this screen here, and you guys can see I've got my colors and my parameters all set up already. We're going to come down here to this open one. I'm going to click that. We're going to look for AN1. Right here we've got AN1 and then fuel PSI, which is what we named it. Then we can come over here, pick our color. I'm going to go with blue, and then we can simply just close it. And we're good to go. So let's head out to the car. We will fire this thing up and take it for a ride. Mainly what we're looking for here is as our boost goes up, we want to see our fuel pressure go up by 1 PSI per pound of boost. So our base fuel pressure was what, 45 or 46? Somewhere in there. It was like 44 or 45 PSI base. And then as we go up for boost, we want to see it add pressure to our fuel based off of that boost pressure. Seems like it did. We'll take a look at that log real quick and see what it says. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at that log just super quick, make sure it's doing what it's supposed to be, and then we will go drive it again. Right at 0 pounds of boost, we were at about 44 pounds of fuel pressure. So let's see, 44.0, so let's see what I made for boost. 2 PSI, we're at 45.3. At 4 pounds of boost, we're at 46.79. 6 pounds of boost, we're at 47.9. 8 pounds of boost, we're at 52.7. 13 pounds of boost, we're at 58.29. 18 pounds of boost, we're at 61.6 PSI. 20 pounds, we're at 64 PSI. But again, I only did a pull to 22 pounds of boost and, well, 6,000 RPM. So I didn't run it all the way out. Let's go try it again. We'll do another log and go from there. Really clean. I'll have to see what it did for fuel pressure and go from there. All right, let's go take a look at that log and see what it says. Now that we've got our data log opened up, let's go ahead and take a quick scroll through. I did go ahead and make some reference marks up here at the top, so we can take a look at those here in a second. But as we scroll through the entire log, we're not seeing a perfect one-to-one climb with fuel pressure versus boost, but we are definitely seeing fuel pressure climb as boost goes up. So I'm not seeing anything that scares me. Everything looks perfectly fine. We are seeing it modulate a little bit, but we also see that with our RPM signal as well as a few other sensors. So I think this car just has some electrical interference or electrical noise going on with it. But if we come up here to our first marker, we are at 5.5 pounds of boost and 51 PSI fuel pressure. And then if we come over here to my second mark, we made 24 pounds of boost and 64 pounds of fuel pressure. So like I said, not a perfect one-to-one climb, but definitely doing exactly what it needs to do, building more fuel pressure with more boost. So all in all, the sensor's doing exactly what it needed to. I really mainly just installed it so that when we start leaning on this thing, we can make sure we're not losing fuel pressure, because we are still running a single WALBRO 450 pump. Now, the clean injection 1500cc injectors, even on 25 pounds of boost, we are still only at 45% duty cycle on an E85 blend. So these things have tons of room left to go. They're doing phenomenal. So really happy all the way around with our fuel system, and this thing is ready to be turned up. Alright guys, so as you can see, our fuel pressure sensor from Low Dollar Motorsports is doing exactly what it was supposed to do. It's working perfectly, and honestly, it was super easy to wire up and get set up in the Hondata ECU. So definitely going to keep an eye on their sensors and see if there's anything else we want to add to our Turbo Civic, because we do still have some open analog inputs. So super happy with how that all turned out. The sensor itself was only like $41, so that's absolutely awesome. They have a whole bunch of other sensors that are very budget minded as well, and they seem to work perfectly, at least if you scale them properly, like we did go back and do. But I did have a few other pulls recorded, and I can't seem to find them. I don't know if the SD card got corrupted, or if maybe I just forgot to hit record and I thought I had them. But either way, we're gonna have to just stick with the two pulls that we did today. But we do have some more stuff coming with the Turbo Civic, since we now know that we're not running out of fuel pump and we have a ton of injector left to go. We can turn this thing up a little bit more. Also, on the big block Camaro project, we finally have the big block almost all the way back together, so that should be getting dropped down in here very soon. As always, I appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ring that bell, and check us out on all of our other social media platforms: Facebook, TikTok, and Bought to Build Official on Instagram. Also, just in case you haven't heard, we did decide to open up YouTube memberships. So if that's something that interests you and you want to become one of the first ever Bought to Build YouTube channel members, or if you're just looking for a way to help support the channel, make sure to go and check those out. As always, I appreciate you for sticking around to the end, and we will catch you on the next one.